An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 58. Let It Burn. Eyes fluttering, John yawned with his mind still fogged up with sleep. He stretched automatically, working out the kinks in his back and legs. Tendrils of his amazing dream still in his mind. Only such wasn't a dream. A smile crossed his lips as the Emperor realized that it had happened last night. He had arrived back in Westeros and into his wife's arms. Smile widened as he reached out to pull her to him, only to be met with a warm yet empty patch of bed. Opening his eyes, John furrowed his brows in confusion. Daenerys? Where was she? Good morning, Your Majesty. He suddenly sat up to find Missandei at the foot of the bed, with a small smile on her lips. Clearing his throat, John pulled up the thick down blanket to fully cover up his legs and hips. Unlike his unabashed Khaleesi, John kept his northern modesty. The Narthi found it amusing. Relax, Your Majesty. Such isn't anything I haven't seen before. Her close friendship with the Imperial family gave her considerable leeway. Quite. Hearing the winds howl from the outside, he was grateful to the braziers keeping the chambers warm. Where is my wife? Missandei was adept at reading her queen. In the matters of the heart, there was no denying her moods. It was the same with her Emperor. She woke early in the morning, Your Majesty. You were fast asleep, probably from your long journey. Her Majesty didn't wish for you to be awoken just yet. A tiny smirk played at her lips. She is in her bath, in the next room. I shall allow you your privacy, sire. Watching the translator swiftly exit the room, John chuckled. So, his wife was taking a bath. He goes into the bath and starts kissing her. They're both naked in the bath. Okay, I'm just going to say the dialogue. This is uncomfortable for me, so hope you guys enjoy. Awake at last, my Emperor? You should have woken me up, John growled. Good morning, husband, she said, leaning down to kiss him. John deepened the kiss. Morning, wife. The water feels so good, especially with the cold outside. Dany felt a wave of joy. Blood of my blood, he said in Valyrian. They were meant to be. Love of my life, he replied in Valyrian. His Valyrian still retained John's northern brogue, but was greatly improved. Watching him, rapture in her eyes, Dany lunged forward and resumed the kiss. Line break. A low hum of whispers and hushed conversations resonated through the room. Lords and advisers clustered into groups, based on faction and mutual interest. The door swinging open to reveal Missandei and Grey Worm forced them to their seats, standing respectfully for the arrival of the Empress. And arrive she did, proud and confident as usual. But a smile graced her face, one of joy and completeness, something that had not been seen for a long time. Any doubt as to why was dissipated when the Emperor walked in not far behind, more dour and brooding than the Empress, who nevertheless sported a small smirk and determined set in his shoulders. Lord Stark, his brother, was up first. Brother! The two enveloped each other in a manly hug. I knew no fuckers in the south could take you down. I'm glad to see you healed, brother, John replied, looking his brother over. Aside from a small scar on his forehead, he seemed to be recovered from the Battle of the God's Eye. Regarding his future sister, who had joined Robb to greet him, John smiled warmly. Thank you for taking care of him, sister. The young Tyrell hugged him as well. It was my pleasure, sire. After hugging Sam, it was Tyrion's turn. Well, well, it appears not only cats have multiple lives, Your Majesty, he chuckled. You truly are Fortune's favourite. John was never one to take compliments, but he accepted it. Perhaps. Motioning for everyone to take their seats, John pulled his chair right next to Daenerys, close enough to brush his hand against hers. I am sure that you have read my dispatches, so allow me to be brief. The Master's alliance has been defeated, with Yezan Zogaraz of Astapor surrendering and switching sides. I have reorganized the cities of Slavers Bay into the Kingdom of New Valyria, with Daenerys as queen, among her other titles. The Empress beamed. As my seat is here, not to mention at King's Landing when we wrested from Joffrey's hands, New Valyria will be governed by a Grand Senate of both highborn and lowborn. His Majesty has established such a government in my stead. Unseen by all, except those closest to the couple, she squeezed Jon's hand. Peace has returned to the region, and the Targaryen army in the region has been moved to Valantis. I have put Sir Podrick Payne in charge of the army of the south. Jon was interrupted by Tyrion's laughter. All eyes were on the imp. Forgive me, sire. It's just... he giggled. Knowing Podrick from his youth, it is hard to imagine him in a military mind. To some surprise, Jon chuckled as well. True. As it was hard to imagine myself as heir to the Targaryen line, or you being one of the most powerful men in the Empire. Dwarves and bastards. Dwarves and bastards, the imp grinned. May I interject, sire? Asked Catelyn Stark. We were expecting your arrival from Meereen several days before. The blizzard would explain the delay, but not one of such length. Narrowing his eyes, Jon examined the woman for signs of resentment or hate, just knowing that Dany was doing the same. But he could find none. Only a sense of curiosity and... concern? Not having quite forgiven or forgotten, his guardedness deflated slightly. We encountered a storm, stalling our progress. Then we were ambushed by a squadron of ships under the command of Euron Greyjoy. In the course of it, I was knocked off Rhaegal and into the sea. A series of gasps left many of those present. Not having heard this, Dany gripped his hand tightly, willing herself the knowledge that he was alive. I was rescued by Theon Greyjoy and his lone ship. He was that far south? Tyene Martell asked. Aye. Euron set upon us, but we defeated his lone ship, freed Yara Greyjoy, and I killed Euron myself. Theon perished. The council digested this. So, we rule the high seas, Catelyn mused, but not completely. The shipping lanes between Braavos and King's Landing are still open, and it does not do shit for us on land. We are still in the same situation. And what might that be, Lady Stark? Jon asked. Forgive me, but I was too busy winning victories at Essos to pay much attention. Robb and Marjorie snickered while Tyene, Davos and Dany smirked. Sighing, Catelyn brought up the argument for dynamic assault from the day before, which only led to the same argument. With the expanded council, it roped into more of the advisors in the various camps regarding attack or defend, causing Jon to sigh and lean back in his chair. His head was pounding. Good mood from earlier? Gone. Robb, he interjected, not standing with the bickering anymore. Since all our plans involve dealing with Joffrey, we need to know of the other threat. What news from the north? Robb held up a dispatch. I have a report from Castle Black here. Ed says it's quiet. The Giants have come back to Castle Black from their expedition. Robb stated, sliding it to his brother. Found a few others. Many children. Not enough to make a difference, given the lessons from Winterfell. Our spotters found no trace of the army of the dead, but one claims he saw a massive host of them halfway between Hardhome and Eastwatch by the sea. Jon clenched his fists, parchment crumpling between his fingers. This was just perfect. Caught in a vice between the insane one and the Night King. Sam, he said, looking at his friend and de facto Grand Maester. You've looked into every scrap of paper between here and the wall. Is there any information in the ancient text on whether the Night King can break through or climb over the wall? The reference texts are sparse, sire. It was hard for the man to reference his longtime friend by his honorific. I would need to access the library at the Citadel to make any firm guess. Impossible, stated Edmure Tully. Too deep within the reach. Tarly's control it these days, and I highly doubt this second-in-command to Tywin Lannister would want anything to do with you, young Tarly. It was not lost on Sam that his father despised him. He did not need to be reminded of it. The wall is a combination of ice, rock, and magic according to legend. Based on what I have found, all ancient epics refer to something called the Great Fall. There isn't much said about it, but it seems to me that the long night cannot start without it. Well, in that case, we should concentrate on the Baratheon brute, drawled Olenna Tyrell, sounding bored with all of this. Knowing the Night King was the true enemy, Jon nevertheless knew he could not be defeated unless humanity was united. A gamble was in order. He closed his eyes. We face annihilation from the land beyond the wall. And yet we face annihilation anyway, since Joffrey will refuse a united front. Let the dice fly high. Mother, father, let this succeed. Daenerys knew where he was going. Once he trailed off into his thoughts, she continued. The war against Joffrey is our main focus then. Lord Stark, how long would it take for us to amass an army that can challenge Tywin?
Assuming he doesn't call upon the forces in Dorne or the majority of the sellsword armies concentrated in Essos, a month. Perhaps 2. All we can afford to leave in the north are the forces of the Night's Watch.
They are independent of all kingdoms and governments, Tyrion mused. While that is of dubious legality, it would be wise to respect that. And unfortunately, they are too small to make up any difference. News of the great ranging that was wiped out so thoroughly had been sparse in King's Landing. Jon and Sam claimed it was the White Walkers. Official reports cited wildlings. Tyrion leaned forward towards the latter, at least until proof of the living dead was to be gleaned. The Empress chafed at such a delay, but it would give her time with her husband and her children. Frankly, all present could use such time before the coming campaign would take everything out of them. It is settled then. Draft the orders and send them out, ciphered in the case of the enemy captures the dispatch.
Should we create an additional army out of the transferred forces? Asked Robb. Or should we fill in the 3 current ones to bring them back to strength?
There were good arguments for both sides. An additional army would give more mobility, but weaker ones could be less protected if running into a Lannister force. At that point, Jon snapped out of his reverie.
Reinforce the current armies.
There was no room for discussion in the order.
Dismissed.
As everyone began to file out, Jon turned to the 2 of them.
Robb, Tormund, please stay.
The ginger wildling looked bored and sat back down, while Robb kissed Marjorie on the cheek and whispered something in her ear. Feeling a soft hand on his arm, the Emperor met the concerned eyes of his wife.
Don't worry, my love. It won't take long.
He tried to give her a reassuring smile. Dany didn't seem to believe him, but she nodded all the same. I shall be with the children. She stood on her tiptoes to kiss his lips and then walked out.
All right, King Crow, what's this about?
Jon realised how much he missed Tormund's bluntness. Godsey was a glutton for punishment.
You've both heard about Bran.
It was a statement, not a question.
Robb's brows furrowed in worry. Aye, he's got the Stark stubbornness in him. Only now it's going to get him killed if someone doesn't rescue him. Good luck with that. Tormund laughed grimly. Only fucking bricks with half a brain would go north of the wall now. I mean, when I lived there it was a fucking giant shit. But with all those ice fucks marching around. He trailed off looking at Jon. Oh, fuck me, you're not considering it.
Jon looked them both in the eye.
I can't let him die. A small team can go in, get him out, and get him back here with no one else any the wiser. That could work, Robb stated. Have one or Max stay at Castle Black while we send some others north by boat. Gendry, Sabaristan, perhaps? Tain Martell.
Jon seemed serious.
She's good with a blade, and saved my children from Euron. Also Grey Worm.
Both were vital to the war effort, but their skills made it likely that all would survive the mission.
You're all fools. Tormund snorted. I guess I am too. Where do I sign up?
Line break. It was a sunny day, only a smattering of clouds in the sky. Bran felt the warmth upon him, and yet the area seemed familiar. In front of him was a tall, weirwood tree. He looked at it as if regarding a miracle of nature. Before him was the same tree resided in by the three-eyed raven. Only the icy wasteland was a beautiful grassy plain, with flowers and fauna. Animals were not the only scampering creatures. Arranged in a semicircle around the base of the tree were a cluster of children of the forest, each holding a glowing gem. A single child stood in the middle of the semicircle, facing the tree. And tied to that tree, fighting against his restraint and the gag tied around his mouth, was Marden Stark. He was older than the previous vision, Bran noticed. The coiffed blonde hair was thinning, skin marked with the scars of a hard life. But why was he here? Why did the children tie him up to the sacred tree? It was confusing to the young man from Winterfell. Soon it became apparent. Stepping forward, face hardening at the task before him, the child of the forest removed a shard of dragonglass from his belt, resting the tip of it against Marden Stark's chest. Muffled by the gag, Bran could still hear the blood-curdling cry erupting from Marden Stark as the children of the forest drove the dragonglass shard into his heart. and yet there was little blood, only a small pooling around the wound. A sudden chill draped over the landscape. The pained screams died down as the bound Marden stilled, eyes turning a malevolent, icy blue. Eyes flying open, Bran felt a coughing fit overcoming him. His heart was pounding from the vision. "Here, drink this." He looked up to see Leaf putting a cup of water in his hand. He downed it, calming his throat. It is not uncommon for the Great One to come across a vision this unpleasant. Bran stared at Leaf as if she had sprouted 3 heads and belching wildfire.
"You did it!" Anger boiled inside him. "You turned Marden Stark into the Night King!" His ancestor. The first Stark. He was the demon commanding the armies of the dead. It was rather sobering. Back turned to the crippled Stark. Leaf refused to face him. She couldn't. The first men were wiping us out, cutting down our forests, turning them into fields for farming, hunting us down when we, hungry, tried to eat their corn and grain. We weren't a warlike people, and it cost us. Shame crossed her face, as strong now as it had been all those millennia ago. Our spiritual leader found a way to create a weapon, a protector that would beat back the invaders. And yet you created an uncontrollable monster. It wasn't my call, she yelled back. Quickly the defensiveness withdrew. But it doesn't matter. It happened, and we are all culpable. Silence descended over the cave, for what seemed like an hour. If you created him under your control and direction, why did he turn on all life? The memories of that dark time were still fresh in her mind. He was strong-willed, missed his wife and child, believed them to be dead from our actions. They weren't, but his belief drove out the last bit of his sanity. He broke from our control and sought his vengeance upon the living world. She closed her eyes, tears in them. I can still hear the cries of my brothers and sisters. Not able to do anything but watch, as the ancient being broke down quietly. Bran felt the cold creep up on him. The Night King was a Stark. The first Stark. Torn away from his Targaryen wife and half-blood son. Driven insane from the ultimate evil, the ultimate power, and the ultimate loss. From the mistakes of those not on this earth anymore, having departed long before, Bran knew there would be many more screams before this nightmare would end. Line break. Something different was going on. And different, Arya knew, was not good. In King's Landing, where routine hewed to day in and day out resulted in death and suffering, any shift in the routine only meant greater death and suffering. When the guards corralled the slaves into the centre of the city, following their back-breaking day of work, overlooked by the Red Keep itself, there was no doubt in her mind that something malevolent was in the offing. She could see it in the faces of her companions. Kinvara was silent, hands clasped together in silent prayer. The Hound, though still sarcastic and flippant, had a slight tremor in his fingers. Arya had been around him long enough to know his tells. It was at that point that the giant horns boomed across the entire city. Like a trained bear, the mass of slaves and small folk all fell to their bellies. Arya, a split second behind the rest, quickly joined. Her instincts would be honed over the next weeks or months, as everyone else's were. One must lay prostrate in the presence of the Chimera. Not doing so risked death. In less than a minute, all in King's Landing but a dozen or so were collapsed on their fronts facing the Red Keep. For fuck's sake, what is this all about? The Hound hissed. Looks like every fucker in King's Landing is up there. She turned to Kinvara in spite of Clegane mumbling about her stating the obvious thing on the planet. Has this ever happened before? Once, Kinvara whispered, when he announced Robb Stark's death after the Red Wedding. Or so we thought at the time. All right, not good at all. Bent over by Joffrey, the little shit whispering something as if he would combust into a million pieces if he had to speak to the crowd,
Arya watched as the High Sparrow trotted forward to the dais.
Citizens, servants, children of the Seven, blessed be the gods for their bounty upon this great land. Well, this is a fucking waste of my time,
muttered the Hound, snorting at Arya.
They dragged me from my shit-ass bed to listen to this.
Shut up, Arya hissed. She did not want a whipping from the gods.
That our great leader, the mighty Chimera, asks as your disciple upon this earth for your assistance, for a fraction of your power, to strike down the demon to the north.
This piqued Arya's interest. Jon must have fucked their asses. While the victories of Tywin and Euron were trumpeted by the propaganda organs over and over again in an endless loop, any talk of defeat ended in death. But nothing this blatantly mystical and ridiculous would be attempted if everything was sunny for the Lannisters. Arya couldn't help but smirk. Her smirk soon disappeared.
For this we offer you flesh, the High Sparrow gulped, looking over at Qyburn, and blood.
Muffled shouts and cries of struggle drew the attention of the officials on the dais. Even Joffrey, lace veil swishing against his skin, as he turned his head to look behind him. No! No! Let me go! Sir Preston and Sir Boros emerged from the black interior of the Red Keep, each holding the arm of the Princess Marcella. Don't you know who I am? Those among the massive crowd of prostrate citizens and slaves before the palace were stunned and confused. What the? Arya had no idea what was going on anymore. Marcella, Arya, remembering her as a sweet, gentle girl, was not making it easy on the two knights to hold her steady. You are making a big mistake! Mama! Brother! Brother! Whatever decorum that had been drilled into her abandoned out of fear and confusion, she managed to break free and lurched towards her brother. Brother, please! Tell them to leave me alone! Clutching at Joffrey's robes, a swift backhand from the king sent her sprawling. Qyburn was sprinting as the knights picked her up.
She cannot be harmed prior to the ceremony, all highest. It won't work otherwise.
Joffrey, silent, merely waved him off. Just as confused as the others, Cersei began pushing herself forward. Stop! Leave her be! She shoved aside Pycelle and nearly forced her way to her son. She was only blocked by Daario Naharis, the sellsword gripping both of her wrists.
Restrain her,
ordered Littlefinger. If his brainchild fucked up, it would be his head. He was still figuring out how to keep Tywin or Jaime, more likely Jaime, from slicing his head off anyway. Preston and Boros pulling Marcella, her pretty white dress ripped slightly from her jerks. They managed to bring her to the stake and tie her to it. The rough rope bit into her wrists, and her struggles began to die. Daario shoved Cersei into the arms of the Mountain, who wrapped them around her in a tight, effortless hold.
Sorry, my queen, remarked the sellsword sarcastically.
Let me go! The Queen Mother hissed. Marcella! Untie her, now! The High Sparrow gently marked the quiet, trembling girl with a 7-pointed star, the sign of the 7 in red ink.
Oh, holy gods above, hear us now. Tonight we bring forth this young girl, pure of heart, blood of kings in her veins. We ask that through your gift of fire to your people, that this humble sacrifice be made with your joy. What? Marcella's eyes widened in terror. No! Cersei fought against her captor. Are you sure of this?
Mumbled the doddering old Pycelle, leaning into Littlefinger's ear. He shrugged.
If there is magic in this world, this ceremony should work.
There is magic in this world, interjected Daario, taking his place on Littlefinger's other side. I have seen it. It would be a shame if Jon Snow died by this and not by his own hand, but Daario wouldn't be hard-pressed to overcome such a disappointment. Don't do this! Marcella fought her binds, watching her mother cry out, Brother, please don't do this!
Accept this token of our devotion to his most holy majesty, and allow him to show us all the way.
Gasping behind her, Arya turned slowly to see Kinvara with wide eyes.
What the fuck is going on?
She was taken aback by the anguish in Kinvara's eyes. They're, she whispered, voice faltering, they're preparing a sacrifice by fire. It is very old, very dark magic. She cursed, whispering a prayer to her lord. In the ancient days, priests used volunteers to take down enemies. 1,000 years ago, we changed it to blood.
7 hells. They're using Marcella? Arya wanted to throw up. The young girl, despite her mother being Cersei the bitch, was a sweet person. She didn't deserve this. So many didn't deserve their horrible fates in this war. Fuck King's Landing. Fuck the king. No one could disagree with the Hound in that moment. Arms lowering, the High Sparrow motioned to his slender comrade. Brother Lancel, please. Having purged all ties of blood, the form that was once Lancel Lannister only held loyalty to his faith and his king. Face set in stone, awed in the glorious sacrifice of the woman once his cousin, he lowered the torch in his hands to the flaming brazier. As the flames licked up the pyre, Marcella's screams could be heard across the city. Mother! Mother! It hurts! Arya cringed, tears streaming down her cheeks regardless of her inner strength. To her right, the Hound shook, his face ashen at the sight. Arya felt herself being pulled towards her left. Shh! Don't speak! Don't look at it, child! Kinvara let the young woman bury her eyes in her shoulder, arm looping to cover Arya's ears. She shouldn't witness this. No person should. Father, Smith, warrior. Mother, crone, stranger. Mother, recited the High Sparrow, fighting to keep his voice steady in the face of the brutality before him. Only undying faith in the Chimera kept his spirit high. Your chosen humbly offers you this sacrifice of royal blood and flesh untouched by man. Brother, please! The flames were engulfing Marcella's dress, beginning to fully drape over her. To the side, still restrained by the Sovereign Guards, Cersei wept in strangled sobs. So close to her beloved girl, yet also so far. Many of the highborn, the nobles clustered around the dais, tried to look anywhere but the spectacle before them. Others watching it intently, smug grins on their lips. The king, staring at the stake from behind his veil, remained deathly quiet. Normally, he'd be elated at such a display, but of his younger sister, emotion had left him. He regarded it as one would a rock. Taking a small jar from one of the warrior's sons, the High Sparrow resumed his chant. By your strength and power in these dangerous times, we ask you to purify your chosen land, to imbue in his highest Joffrey, most holy majesty of Westeros, the highest strength and wisdom, to bring death to the false ruler, the bastard Jon Snow. Screams piercing through the night air, whiffs of acrid smoke and searing flesh accompanying them. All that was left of the once gorgeous princess was the manifestation of pain itself. Even the most hardened slave or citizen was openly weeping now. Someone so innocent, fed to the literal hellfire for something no one can truly understand. Eyes flickering to the fellow souls of the kings in a circle. Seeing nothing but indifference or disgust on their faces, the High Sparrow lifted the jar. We are your children, and for this request we are unworthy of. Please accept the payment. Youth and blood. With that, he hurled the jar into the flames, nearly rocking back as the wildfire within detonated in a tongue of green flame. It exploded high into the heavens, mercifully incinerating the poor princess, sparing her further agony. As the flames died down, not a single sound could be heard over the city but the sobs of Queen Cersei, joined by those of the hundreds of thousands of others, feeling her pain. Finally, risking a glance at the Red Keep, Arya just knew that there was a smile of triumph on Joffrey's face. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that because, oh my god, I was not looking forward to doing that. I hope I did it justice, guys, because that is one of the most horrible things I have ever read aloud. Oh god, Marcella. It's basically Shireen's sacrifice from the show, which again, it took me so long to watch that. Oh my god. Like, I'm actually shaking. So there's going to be a blowout from this. There really is. See you guys in another video. Remember to check out my others as well, and like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in.
Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!